Oregon, where the intervention measures and or the virus itself have not demonstrated themselves like they have in New York or California or even Washington State. We've been fortunate. Frankly, that's a credit to a lot of you guys, the governor's office and others that have stepped in to try and mitigate what would appear to be a huge potential disaster. It is disastrous enough. If it isn't a disease, it's unfortunately sometimes the mitigation measures that are being taken to try and protect us from the coronavirus. We're not sure we're getting it all right, to be very honest with you. First time I've ever been through something like this, talking with a lot of people around here that even older than me. This has never been done before, never seen this sort of thing before, both from the viral standpoint and from the business impact and family impact standpoint. Congress has stepped up big time. You guys have seen that. I won't go into a bunch of details. You guys can ask questions if you want a little bit later in the program on it. I'd like to keep this fishery focused, but we've done 3 different packages. The biggest one, most recently, being this CARES package, over $2 trillion put out the door. By way of comparison, there was a tremendous amounts of angst and heartache over putting over $700 billion out just 10 years ago in the Great Recession. So we're dwarfing that number, trying to get aid to individuals, whether it's unemployment, the small businesses out there through a variety of loan and forgivable loan programs, trying to make sure kids have something to eat, take care of our bigger businesses, make sure our schools and our healthcare providers are getting what they need given these crazy times that we're in. So we're working really, really hard at it. Tout our own horn a little bit. We got this done in record time. This we met, I think, March 8th, got something out by March 15th or 16th. And then again here, just a few weeks ago, passing the CARES package. So a little patience, if I may ask everybody, as we're trying to get the money out the door. SBA, the Small Business Administration, not historically a money lending institution, so they're learning this right now. We're seeing, unfortunately, that with the disaster loans, very few of those are making its way back to individuals. The Treasury is working really hard with our lenders, trying to get the Paycheck Protection Program operational. Looks like it's starting to this past week. Checks are coming. The biggest challenge I'm going to have, hopefully, in the next week or two, is to go back to DC and or vote remotely to make sure that we actually augment that program. It's oversubscribed. I think you've all heard that it's been shut down as of today. Just can't take any more applications. The money's been obligated. So we've got to refurbish that or replenish that trough of money, and hopefully we'll do so. I don't say that lightly. But our small businesses should all be treated equally, which means everyone gets a shot at that assistance. Trying to work on that with the fishing community. There's problems with PPP and how it relates to the fishing community. And so we've been on the horn and with folks back in Washington, D.C., the Treasury Department and others, trying to set that thing up in a much better way. Trying to make sure that the disaster loan money from the salmon fisheries for the last couple of years gets out the door. It's been a little slow in coming. Trying to make sure we cross all the T's and dot all the I's for all these guys at the end of the day. I'd like to get that done. The refi package, hallelujah, we finally got the money to back that, frankly, the OMB owes us. Been charging us interest on, us being the fishing fleet, unfairly for quite some time. I know Heather and others are working very closely, trying to figure out what the dollar amount should be with Noah and Barry and everybody. So that seems like it's a pretty transparent process, which is really good. Really appreciate that in these days when things are a little scary, a little uncertain. And biggest, most recent news, thank you, Barry, is ability for our fishing fleet to go out regardless of whether or not an observer is on board over at least the next 2 weeks, as we make sure these observers are COVID-free and not infecting our fleet. We do not need that to have happen right now. I've had a chance to be on a call with Tony Della Ponte the other day from Pacific Seafood, and that whole supply chain is being backed up with no restaurants in action right now. It's a real problem. So every little help we can get and making sure the fleet's working and we find markets for our fish, that's going to be key. That's going to be key. So I'll stop talking at this point here. I really appreciate everyone being here. We really want to hear from you. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Barry then to talk a little bit about what NOAA's doing, how they're coping with the COVID crisis, and a little bit more on this temporary waiver program. Thanks, Barry.
All right. Hey, thanks, Congressman, and hello, everybody. It's good to see all of you out there. First of all, I was just going to introduce too. There's quite a few NIMS folks online. Most of you probably recognize many of them, but I just wanted to highlight Dr. Kevin Warner from our Northwest Science Center is on as well. There may be some questions on surveys and what's going on there. Ryan Wolf, our Sustainable Fisheries ARA, and Kelly Ames, his deputy, are on as well. And then Susan Bishop and Jeremy Jordan are on as well, who handle a lot of our salmon fisheries stuff. So we have quite a few NIMS folks on in case there are questions when we get to that section of the agenda. You know, I know the COVID-19 is affecting everybody out there. You can't escape being affected either personally or professionally. And it really has created a lot of uncertainty in everybody's lives out there, where I think we're all dealing with it in our own certain way, whether we've had friends or relatives that have had it, people that have died from it, or it's affected our jobs and economy. And it's amazing how all encompassing it is for everybody out there on the landscape, and what the impacts have been. So Congressman wanted me to walk through a few things going on sort of within NOAA fisheries related to COVID. So I was going to walk down just a few of those to start with, and then we'll have some time for questions. One, I wanted to highlight, the Congressman highlighted the CARES Act. So there's $300 million in there for the fishing communities. I think NOAA is still working on how that money will be dispersed. They've set up a website so you can access that through the main NOAA fisheries website, fisheries.noaa.gov, to get information. Right now, they have not determined how that program will run. I'll just highlight a couple things. One, just recognizing it's $300 million. There's 32 coastal states that's going to go to. So it's not a lot of money for the fishing community out there. And I'll talk a little bit more about the impact side of it. The other piece is it's likely, there will be some sort of application process. And so I'm just encouraging folks to get your paperwork, get your information together to be able to document the losses, so that when that program does hit the streets, you'll be able to apply as quickly as possible, and just highlighting that for folks. And I know a lot of people are doing that. And within NOAA Fisheries and through our science centers and others, they've been collecting a lot of information on the economic impacts to the industry out there, and they've compiled that, and we'll be releasing that so that people have a good snapshot of what the total impact is, recognizing that $300 million doesn't cover the impact that we're seeing so far. Those impacts, whether it's been the processing side, the fishing side, the aquaculture side, the shellfish side, there's been numerous impacts. Recreational, commercial fishing both have been hit incredibly hard. And I think that it's good that we're actually collecting that information to have that baseline of what those impacts are out there. The agency's also collecting ideas for what they can do moving forward, for ideas whether internally in the agency or potential ideas for congressional action to take in any future bills that come forward for action. So they have been collecting those. There's an email site on the main website. You can send in emails. I know we've received several letters and requests and ideas of some of those ideas for what can be done out there, whether it's, related to the loan programs and deferring payments on loans, paying for electronic monitoring or observers in the fleet, direct payments to fishermen like the CARES Act actually provides for, or marketing ideas, as well as a lot of other different ideas, and both ideas that get us out of this sort of adjust for the current crisis, as well as set us up in the future in terms of a better place, so the industry is better positioned to weather any of these kinds of impacts in the future moving forward. So I think that, that exercise will continue. And NOAA's going to be weighing in on those issues and looking for opportunities to get those issues in front of Congress as well, I think, over time. The Congressman mentioned the observer thing. So if you haven't seen the news, so we did proceed with a waiver of observers and catch monitors at plants for the next 2 weeks. That program is being set up based on working with the observer providers to waive observers for 2 weeks to allow for a 14-day isolation of observers. and also to institute a 1-to-1 observer to boat or catch monitor to plant ratio to prevent any transfers across. And they've also agreed to keep the observers within the coastal communities that they serve. So, in the case of Oregon, the Oregon observers will stay within Oregon. They aren't going to be going to California or, in other places, and they'll be assigned to that boat, and they'll be able to go home and isolate at home in between trips, but they will stay within those coastal communities moving forward. And then lastly, I was going to hit in terms of the COVID response, the survey side of it. So the Northwest Fisheries Science Center has, as of today, canceled some of their surveys over the next couple of months based on a variety of reasons. The main one being logistically, it's almost impossible to get a survey going between trying to get shipyard time, getting the electronics installed in the ship, in the boats, getting dive crews to certify that the boats can go out after they've installed the electronics, and getting, those crews are a lot of volunteers, a lot of university professionals and others that go out on those cruises, and just getting those crews together to actually get those surveys underway. So a lot of factors that went into that. All of these issues are being vetted all the way up through the head of the agency. Anything we're doing right now, given the COVID response and the national implications of everything we do, is all being vetted all the way up through Chris Oliver to ensure consistency nationwide moving forward. And then lastly, I'll just highlight, we just got to the council meeting last week. A couple of, one, there's an emergency action for the trawl fleet and the mothership and catcher processors that was put forward there to provide some flexibility there. And then on the salmon fisheries side, we did reach agreement on the salmon fisheries for the coast. Susan has been working with the states. There's been a lot of cooperation to figure out what we could do for salmon fisheries up and down the coast, both from a conservation perspective of what's available for harvest, as well as responding to COVID-19 and the monitoring and ports being open and all of those other factors that add just an additional layer of complexity to the system this year. Unfortunately, from a numbers perspective, the numbers aren't that good for the Oregon coast this year from a salmon fishing perspective. They're down across the board. I think the commercial and recreational fisheries are by 25% and like 14 or 15% of what they were last year, largely because of the limitations related to Klamath fall chinook, having to reduce catches for Klamath fall chinook on the chinook side, and then also Oregon ghost coho and the OPI production index being probably its third lowest, I think, since 1987. So the fish just aren't there, given the ocean cycles we've seen and other factors we've seen out there. It's disappointing to see that they haven't come back since some of the bad years we've had over the past 5. So that is going to limit some of the fishing opportunities on the salmon side this year moving forward. But we will have some time for questions at the end of the roundtable, but I will turn it back over to the Congressman to move on to, I think, who's up next.
Very good, very good. Thanks, Barry. Thanks. Great synopsis. A lot of room for questions there. Next, we'll hear from what's going on with the whale entanglement, crab fishery programs that ODFW is trying to develop for us. I guess the news was good this year so far, no entanglements. And Karen, why don't you give us the increased skinny here, or the increased where we're actually at right now.
Yeah, thanks for the time, and I'll just take a couple of minutes, but as you all know, I assume you can hear me. Yes. Yep. And as you all know, starting in about 2014, we saw an uptick in whale entanglements, particularly with humpback whales and some increase in blue whales and actually turtles as well. And that was true of Washington, Oregon, and California. And over the next couple of years, we started to understand that this increase in whale entanglements was due to changing ocean conditions, likely, and the whales following their prey into new habitats, particularly associated with the marine heat wave that we affectionately called the blob. And there has been a concerted effort to learn more about the correlations between this fishery problem and what we can do to avoid it in the future. So I think in light of what we've been experiencing in the last 3 or 4 weeks in particular, it seems odd in many ways to talk about something as normal as this kind of fishery management question, but so important to getting us back thinking about the future and how to move through the situation that we're in now. And whale entanglements are not going away. And so I think it is something to keep in the back of our minds. And my updates will really be about where we are in the process from the state's perspective and what's facing us in the future. And this has been an effort by an army of people from the states to NOAA, to the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission and the industry at large. Sea Grant has been important in convening discussions on how to address this issue. Researchers across the West Coast have been important in helping us understand it. So this army has been working in their own ways to better understand the problem and suggest ways to help get us through. From ODFW's perspective, we are in the process of putting regulations in place in our administrative rules to reduce the risk of entanglement and essentially separate crab, gear, and whales when they're more abundant in Oregon's waters. We had a package, a regulatory package that was due to be listened to for tomorrow by our commission. That has been canceled. That exhibit has been canceled and is delayed, meaning that it will be heard sometime later this spring or summer. We don't have that schedule yet, but July is a likely time for that to be heard. In combination, that will be the foundation for the agency developing the conservation plan, which will be submitted to NMFS in the winter of this year and next year for consideration and approval. It lays out how Oregon will be reducing the risk of whale entanglement in the fishery, and NMFS will consider that in issuance approval and issuance of an incidental take permit in the event that we do entangle endangered species protected whales. So it's very much in progress. Real kudos to the industry for sticking with this really difficult discussion about how we change the way that we do business to better achieve both the economic and conservation needs for this fishery so we can keep folks out on the water fishing. And, as one of Oregon's or the West Coast bread and butter fisheries, this is so essential to all aspects of seafood industry production. We really hope that we can find some successful ways to mitigate the problem. So that's my update on where we are in Oregon.
Very good, very good. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Karen. Let's switch gears, go to Lori Steele with the Seafood Processors Association. As I said, I got a little bit of an earful from Tony the other day, but I think we all need to hear the same thing at the same time. So we're all speaking from the same hymnal, if you will. And appreciate all you guys are doing out there and some of the challenges you're facing. The restaurants are a big part of, I didn't realize how big a part of the industry they are for you guys. And then with China, even before that, it's like a double whammy for our fishermen and processors and the whole food chain, if you will. So take it away, Lori.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. I just want to thank you very much for providing this opportunity. It's great to see some folks. I haven't seen anybody in a really long time. And Congressman, I just wanted to thank you for your leadership and your support on the observer issue and for your understanding of how important it is to keep the industry healthy during this crisis. I want to thank you for your support on the $300 million for the CARES Act and the work you're doing on the Paycheck Protection Program. That's really important as well. There's so much going on. I'm going to try not to be repetitive, and I'm going to try to focus on some issues we haven't talked too much about. I do want to thank your staff so much. Your staff has been incredibly responsive and helpful during this time. I know that they've talked to Tony and others from several of our companies, and we just really appreciate the help. Also, a big thank you to Barry and Ryan and the NIMS staff for the action taken on the observer issue. Heather is going to address that issue in more detail, and I don't want to be repetitive. Just a couple of really quick comments. I really do appreciate the action taken. I am disappointed that the action isn't being taken for the purposes of protecting the health and safety of our fishery participants during the pandemic, and I'm hoping the agency can reconsider that as we move forward if there is a need to still take extreme measures to protect our industry's health and safety, as well as the safety and health of our observers. As I mentioned to Ryan and Barry's staff, I also hope that NIMS will take some time over the next few weeks to work with the industry and with the observers to develop a long-term approach, because we are going to be dealing with this for 12 to 18 months into the future. And we have some significant concerns that we'd like to work out and sort of look long-term at this. I'm happy to participate in that discussion, and I'd really like to get some folks who are working in the processing plants to participate in that discussion too. So I hope you'll encourage that. Before Heather even says anything, I'm just going to go ahead and support everything she's going to say. So I'll move on to the other topic that I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on today, which is a significant problem we're facing, and it's the massive amounts of seafood surplus products that this crisis is leaving us with. We have freezers up and down the West Coast that are full of hundreds and thousands of tons of frozen product from the loss of our restaurant markets virtually overnight. Our restaurant markets were 60 and 70 and more percent of our markets, and they went away in a flash. We have freezers full of Dungeness crab, albacore tuna, black cod piled up with no market. And that's the first problem. The second problem is we're getting ready to start our whiting fishery on May 15th, which is our highest volume fishery and is, you know, a critical fishery for a lot of our communities. We're going to have major problems with our whiting markets this year, particularly export from the COVID situation. There are ports that are closed. We've got shipping issues. Like you mentioned, we were having problems with some of these markets, you know, for crab back in January and February before we experienced the COVID crisis here at home. And we're going to need to find another market for some of our whiting. It would be really great to be able to find a domestic market for some of the fish. Right now, we're facing a national meat shortage, and at the same time, we have a massive seafood surplus. So we need to try to leverage that into something that's going to benefit everybody. It's the healthiest sustainable protein. It's harvested right here in the US, and we have so many citizens in our country right now that are greatly in need of food. Domestic seafood purchase programs that could feed the military, hospitals, healthcare workers, shelters, and the homeless could be incredibly beneficial for our communities and provide the critical markets and economic relief that we need in the industry to keep our coastal communities going. And it can help feed all of our citizens in need. There's so much bang for your buck in these kinds of programs. I'd really like to see something get going as soon as possible. I could even envision a special program where funds are utilized to purchase boxes of crab and seafood product and shipped right from the processors and shipped to hospitals so that every hospital worker could take a box of seafood home with them at the end of a shift. You know, something that is really sort of a COVID crisis food purchase program. So I'm really interested in working on this. It's a critical need. It's a huge bang for your buck. I'm not sure, it's a little bit hard to know, you know, where to start with this. You know, what are the government's capabilities with emergency spending? You know, how can we think outside the box and get this going? I know that there's discussion about this nationally within the agency. So It's on their radar screen, and I'd love to get working on it. And we just kind of would ask for your support on that, and any direction that we can have to get the conversation started and get things moving would be great. I'll leave it there, and thank you once again for everything.
Thanks, Lori. That's great. Good conversation. I got everything. Well, I'm getting a little feedback here. Getting the conversation going. A lot of ground to cover, obviously, and we're facing this up and down the food chain. There's actually plenty of meat from the conversation I heard the other day, but much the same types of situations. It's becoming unproductive now to even farm. Hog prices are pretty terrible. So we've got dairy, same type of issue, a little bit of a surplus, obviously. So the whole ag sector is facing a lot of the same challenges we are here in the fishing industry too. The meeting would not be complete without Heather Mann talking with us a little bit about what's going on. You're always plugged in, Heather, which I really appreciate. Great source of information for my team and me. Hopefully you can give us a little more on the Observer program and how that's working, and some hopefully potential fixes we can have to make things work here just as they do in some of the other fisheries around our great country. Barry and I had a good conversation the other day about that, and there's work to be done. Also a little bit how you're seeing the fishing fleet cope with the COVID crisis. I've heard a little bit obviously from the coastal communities. I've reached out to Lincoln and Tillamook counties and different small businessmen and women, some of your government officials, some of the healthcare folks. But I'd like to hear, if possible, how you guys feel, and for the rest of the folks on the call here chime in at the question and answer period about what you're seeing and how you guys are trying to get by, and frankly, how long you can hang on for. It's a concern if the fish lockers are already full. I don't know what that means, frankly, going forward at this point in time. So anyway, Heather, if you don't mind, could you step in and take it away?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. First off, I just want to thanks for hosting the roundtable, even under these conditions. This is an event that everybody looks forward to each year, and getting your ear and hearing what's going on. For people who don't know me, my name is Heather Mann. I represent the Midwater Trawlers Cooperative, but a lot of the issues that I work on really benefit the broader trawl fleet and fishing industry, our processing partners, and our coastal communities. So I'm going to address 3 areas where we could really use assistance from the federal government, from NIMS, and from you, Congressman, during this time. So first off, everybody knows that fishing, commercial fishing, is deemed essential by the states and by the federal standards, but we're really struggling to ensure safety for our vessels' crew members and in processing plants for our observers. We need to be able to provide testing to keep people working and keep them safe. Access to testing is really difficult, and as you probably know, not broadly available in Oregon. According to the Oregon Health Authority, as of today, only 289 people have been tested in Lincoln County, where our population is around 50,000 people. And these low testing numbers can be seen in other Oregon counties that are home to large fishing ports. So how can we get access to testing? I've reached out to the Port of Newport and Oregon State University to see if we can move the ball forward, similar to what University of Washington is doing with some Alaska fisheries that I'm involved with. I see Paula Miranda on here, as well as Gil Sylvia. I think tomorrow we'll be having a conversation about how we can look into this more. I've also seen on the news where the OSU Veterinary College is making a big effort here on testing. So Congressman, it would be great if you could help us facilitate these broader partnerships and help secure test kits for essential businesses. Another thing we need is access to supplies, and I understand that's really difficult right now. Frontline healthcare workers are having trouble securing supplies for themselves. But when it becomes possible, it would be really helpful to have access to some of that protective equipment and sterilizing supplies so that we can keep our vessels and plants operational and safe. And this is all sort of coming under, just the business of staying in business. I was reading this morning that the small business loan opportunity has been used up. So $350 some odd billion now spoken for, and some businesses being turned away who didn't apply immediately. Over 22 million Americans have lost their jobs. So this is really an economic catastrophe for our country. Rural communities will be some of the hardest hits, and those are our coastal communities. So it's critical to keep fishermen and processors working. And so in order to do that, it'd be really helpful to reduce the cost of producing seafood, even if it's just temporarily. For the trawl industry, we'd like to see NIMS suspend the cost recovery payments for the remainder of 2020. We'd also like to see them suspend our buyback loan payments and accruing interest for the remainder of the year. So these two burdens alone account for about 6.5% of a vessel's gross income when they hit the dock. And so that's off the top. And also, Congressman, thanks to you and your staff, to John, to Julia, she's a rock star, to Huck, and all the work you did to help us achieve our relief on the buyback loan. Fixing the mistake that was made and resulting in millions of extra dollars being put on the responsibility of the fishermen. Unfortunately, that relief has not been implemented yet, but it has been a transparent process, and I really appreciate what you've done and the trawl industry does for helping us get to this point. And when I say let's suspend cost recovery, look, I know that NIMS has bills to pay too, but we also know that NIMS is saving considerable amounts of money right now due to the shelter-in-place orders, resulting in no travel. We know that some of the survey activities are curtailed, and then I think I just heard Barry said some of them are canceled. So those will be saving money. Our markets have been severely disrupted, and you've heard about that from Lori. So we need to make producing seafood less expensive so boats have a reason to actually leave the dock. Another step that NIMS could take is delaying the implementation of the regulatory EM program and allow catcher vessels to continue using EM through the EFP process. That's a major cost savings for the fleet, and it's something the Pacific Council has asked NIMS to do. And then I'm going to finish up by talking about the observer coverage issue. The Pacific Council sent a letter to NIMS this week recommending a blanket waiver on observer coverage for a temporary period to protect human life. I also know, Congressman, that your office sent a letter expressing concerns, and we thank you for that. These comments are not going to be a surprise to Barry or Ryan. It's beyond my comprehension how observer data being collected is as important as human health. It's shocking to me. Accountability is a cornerstone of our ITQ program, and over the last 9 years, we have proven that we are accountable. The industry believes that NIMS is not just risking people's lives by requiring observer coverage during this time, but they're risking our businesses too. Any additional risk is really just unnecessary right now. During the council meeting, NIMS said, well, you're taking a risk just by leaving the dock. This, taking a human observer is another component of that risk. I think industry people, we found that to be, insulting, but also sort of a lack of understanding about the fishing business and crew. We can control what our crew members are doing. We don't control what observers are doing. That's not a role that we have. So, schools are closed through the rest of this year. NIMS employees are required to work at home to protect their families. All the non-essential trips are being eliminated. We're supposed to be wearing face masks in public. Wide-scale testing does not exist. And I guess, let me put it this way. Thousands of prisoners across the country have been released early due to COVID-19. Prisoners being released from jail because of health and human safety concerns. But US fisheries with 100% observer coverage are not receiving that same courtesy. We've heard from scientific folks that say losing a few months of data, even through the summer, will not fundamentally impact our program. We still have EM on several vessels that is collecting data and will continue to collect data. So we really are struggling in the industry to understand why NIMS is continuing to require this unnecessary risk. If it's because we can't be trusted, then we fundamentally reject that. We've proven that we can be trusted over the last 9 years. Just Tuesday of this week, the New England Council voted to postpone even setting at-sea coverage levels for monitoring to sometime later than June. And that's for a LAP program like what we have. They have a LAP program that already has a blanket waiver on observer coverage. So, I heard Barry at the beginning say, we want to look at consistency between regions, between programs, but from where I'm sitting, and with all due respect, I just see a stark disparity between the regions. And let's not forget, observers are expensive. They're $500 a day for an at-sea observer. I'm not sure what the shoreside monitoring costs are, but those are borne by the processor. So waiving the observer coverage temporarily through the summer, it does a lot for health and human safety, and it reduces the cost of producing seafood. And I'll close with, NIPS leadership went on the record at the council meeting saying they were going to pivot toward activities that benefited the industry during the pandemic. And from my perspective, meaningful support comes from meaningful actions. So we're asking you, National Marine Fisheries Service, and you, Congressman, to help us set up a testing program, help us reduce the cost of producing seafood, help us protect human life and our businesses so we can weather the storm. And I would say to Barry, you have put a tremendous staff in place at the region between Ryan and Kelly and Asia. I mean, you have amazing employees that are doing amazing things. And you have the power to make these meaningful changes. You just need the will to do it. And if there was ever a time that, the industry really needed NIMS to be a partner, it's now. So Congressman, I'm happy to answer questions. Any encouragement that you can provide to NIMS to work with us on these issues sooner rather than later would be really appreciated. And thanks so much for the time to talk.
Very good. Thank you, Heather. Thank you all the presenters. Appreciate it very, very much. Let's go to the questions, I guess. John, can you unmute people so they can ask questions, I guess, at this point in time? They've been very patient.
Yes, everybody right now, you all have the ability to unmute yourselves and submit a question or comment. We do ask that you do keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking to cut down on noise. Thank you.
I can't see a card raised, so you have to go on your own.
This is Nancy Fitzpatrick with the Oregon Salmon Commission. I want to say thank you for all that you've done for the salmon industry, but right now we're having obviously tough time. 16 and 17 were declared disasters, and we still have not received the funding from that. And we have asked the governor for 18, 19 to be declared disasters. And then here we are with COVID this year. And as Barry said, there's the 300 million for fisheries, and fishermen should apply sooner than later. But the salmon industry doesn't start until Monday and goes through October. So how can the fishermen apply soon if they have to wait for the season to end so that they can compare it to prior years to show that there has been a loss? So the salmon industry, we're looking at, 5 years of severe times. And so getting that initial 16, 17 disaster money out to the fishermen, even though it's not a lot, would be extremely helpful at this time. So thank you for all that you have done for us.
Barry, a quick comment on that, maybe?
No, I mean, Nancy, I really, yeah, recognizing that in terms of the 300 million, the concern that given the timing of the industry, I would probably expect my equal frustration in getting the disaster money out from 16 and 17, even though it's not, but I know we at the region, excuse me, have been putting a lot of pressure on to try to get that money out the door, and the congressman knows that as well, and we have gotten bollocksed up in the O&B side of things, and it's been painful to try to get that out. And we've continued to try to keep asking and asking to see if we can get it out. But at this point, we're waiting for the spend plans to be approved. So unfortunately.
I appreciate the efforts, and also Congressman, the letter that went to Commerce is much appreciated, that was signed California and Oregon. So thank you again.
You bet. Thank you, Nancy. Hang in there. Other questions?
Congressman, it's more of a comment. My executive director, I apologize, Hugh had to leave to another appointment, but Tim Novotny with the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission. And again, we wanted to extend our thanks to you and your staff for putting this together every year, and especially on this new Zoom era that we're in. I appreciate all the work that you're going to put this together, and happy to see everybody. One of the things that we wanted to stress from our industry is that when the time comes for funding to be dispersed, there's going to be, it's been a fine line that we're going to be walking this year, because when you look at things from our industry perspective, it's going to look a little funny. It's going to look like we had a successful year, and as an industry we did. But for the vast, I would say the vast majority of our fleet, it's going to have been a very bad year. The hardy few that got out early in January probably had a decent year. They paid for it with some very bad weather and some battered lives during that stormy month. But a lot of the mid and smaller boats were not able to get out. By the time they did get out, the live buys to China had dried up because of COVID. And then, of course, restaurants and so forth closed down. And so we are not seeing the prices that we normally see at this time of the year. So when they look at it as an industry, it's going to look different. And I don't know how, Barry and all those that know are going to be looking at things when it comes time to try to disperse funds. But if you look at it from an industry, you might say, oh, well, Dungeness crab maybe doesn't need it so much. But I would, again, and I know there's going to be an application process, and we're telling our fleet that, but just to keep an open eye on the fact that this is going to be an individual boat by boat basis. And a lot of these guys also fish in different fisheries where they're also being hit there as well. So just want to pass that along to, looks can be deceiving, I guess. And again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. That's good input. Very good input. I've seen in other programs, like on the healthcare side, where you have an old formula you distribute things by, and it doesn't necessarily apply in a COVID situation. And I'm sure Noah's taken that into account.
Hey, Congressman, Bob Reese here with the Northwest Guides and Anglers Association. Thanks again for all you're doing for the fishing communities. So grateful for the $300 million that's going to be coming down from the government for disaster relief. In the language, we noticed that the charter fleet is qualified for that funding, which is great. They're of course a cornerstone for recreational fishing on the coast. What I'm not sure about is if fishing guides are actually classified under the charter boat classification. If you ask the Oregon State Marine Board, there is a separate classification that's happened between charters and guides. And it's making a lot of my members of the Northwest Guides and Anglers Association somewhat anxious that we may not qualify for some of that disaster relief funding, just because we are, in fact, a fishing guide versus a fishing charter boat. So I think John was going to look into that. I've been communicating with him a little bit on email, but any insight you or Barry might have would be helpful, as this is a common fear amongst our members.
I don't have a lot of intel at this point, Bob. We'll follow up on the inquiry, though, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob.
Oh, go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, this is Barry. I was just going to say, I know I can't definitively say in terms of the sort of legal interpretation of whether those components are included, but I know in terms of active discussions in the agency, the recreational fishing community, the tackle manufacturing charter, and all of those other subcomponents have been part of the discussion, at least the initial discussions on potentially how some of these allocations could occur. But I don't have a legal definition necessarily yet.
Okay, that's great, and I think it's also somewhat concerning that that totally left out are those tackle manufacturers. I mean, the commercial fishermen and the charter fleet were specifically called out in the language of that disaster relief money, but there was, for the other businesses to support our industry, the tackle manufacturers, the boat manufacturers, they don't seem to be even remotely integrated into the disaster relief money, which has historically been the case, I think, in the few disaster declarations that have happened historically. So that is also a concern of our industry, that some of those other folks might be left out. And, we know this funding's somewhat limited, 300 million for 38 coastal states or whatever was mentioned, is not a lot of money for the amount of output that the industry produces. But we're fearful that those tackle manufacturers and boat manufacturers, like I mentioned before, might not have access to any of that disaster relief money. And they're certainly as impacted as any other industry in relation to fisheries.
I think part of the rationale for that was they were expected that they would participate in the Paycheck Protection Program and ideally these idle loans as they came out the door. If your conversations with some of the folks are that they're not applying for that, I'd urge them to apply. And if they're having any problems, please let me know.
Thanks for the clarification.
The other piece I might add to that, Bob, too, is make sure even set the 300 million aside, but for any additional ideas, to make sure you get those ideas into the fishery service for potential future funding ideas. And the other piece I'd add is that, at least within the agency, trying not to consider the 300 million as what I would define as sort of traditional fishery disaster funding, that it will probably be implemented differently than the traditional disaster programs that go through the governor's offices.
Thank you.
What else, folks?
Hey, it looked like Mike
Congressman. Thank you, Congressman, and thanks for all you've done and your staff. You guys have been really wonderful to work with. And Barry's crew was mentioned by Heather, and Barry and Ryan themselves, Kelly, the whole gang there. They're very responsive, and I've had really enjoyable time working with them on different areas. I do, however, side with Heather and us on the observer program and catch monitors, and I'm going to use a little bit different angle. I know the safety of the people is paramount importance, but also we're in a position where disaster relief or any kind of money pumped into the system is definitely going to help. But the most immediate way to get at something is just to cut your cost profile and your cost of goods when you're doing business. Makes us more competitive, but it also takes a burden off. And I don't know what the total is with the observers, the cost recovery, and the buyback loan, but it's got to come up over 10% or very close to it. In smaller boats, it's going to be a harder hit. Nobody right now is doing very well financially. Cash flow is really tough, and one way to address cash flow is to cut cost. So I'll just leave that one alone, but I think Heather hit it pretty well, and I just say in total agreement. The other thing, though, that bothers me a little bit, and from several perspectives, is the surveys themselves. And these are, in some ways, I think, more important at collecting data because it's new data that goes into the stock assessments. And, to realize that we may get a bunch of cancellations on those surveys could affect our fishing in the future here, or near future. So I don't know if there's much that can be done about that. I think they're taking the right move by keeping those people off the ships and out of harm's way. But on the other hand, we might have some distance to make up if we're lacking data for those stock assessments in some cases. That could be a hit in and of itself if we're not careful about that. So along that same line, though, I am really going to put a plug in for making sure that NOAA fisheries are fully funded. We do work with these people very closely, and we wouldn't have many of the fisheries we do without their help and the science they provide and also the data they provide. So I just put a plug in for that funding. So thank you.
Well, your congressional delegation gets behind their budget religiously every time it comes up, along with most of the West Coast, and even get folks in the Gulf and the East Coast on that. So we'll push hard. Although we're putting a lot of money out the door, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of extra money in our normal appropriations process with all the money we're spending right now. So I just want to set realistic expectations for a lot of folks. Our job right now is to try and keep people, well, we can't even keep you whole, but keep you from going under, get you through a tough time, and from my standpoint, get you back to work as soon as we can.
Hey, Congressman.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for your time earlier this month. The heads up you gave us, boy, you sure were prescient in what you told us at that meeting.
Walter.
I just want to emphasize that the fact that we need to get some testing going. The county has done a great job of, making sure we keep everything here local. But we are going to start to need to get some people tested so we can start bringing these people slowly back in the community. For the port, the recreational fishing and the RVs and everything, that's a large bit of our income during the summer. And I can't stress that we need to get people tested so we know who's safe and so we can start welcoming these people back into the communities. So thanks.
But it's going to be a little tough. Again, setting realistic expectations. I've talked a fair amount with scientists back east. Talked with Scott Gottlieb, used to be FDA commissioner under Trump, and is very, very knowledgeable on the whole COVID situation, where we are with the testing. And I know the governor has tried to prioritize the tests, and I support where she's prioritized, the health providers and the seniors. I mean, people that are showing sickness or any symptoms, or if a doctor has suggested them, boom, that should be the top priority. But in my discussions with Gottlieb, and I was talking to state epidemiologists the other day, to scale up to the testing that'd be needed, we'd have to have, and we're doing 1,000 tests a day, 1,500, pick a number. I mean, we'd have to be at 40,000. I just don't, be honest, guys, I don't see that as possible or realistic. We're going to have to use testing more strategically, I think, going forward. I think the governor's on to that. Let's use it like we do with the flu as a surveillance tool to decide if there's a hot spot developing. We can go in and take care of that. Certainly, if there's any symptomology or anything, then we'd have to go in. But, if we wait till we can test to open the economy up, we ain't open this economy up. It just won't open, guys. We have to look at the caseloads, hopefully going down. They are right now in our state. We've done a pretty darn good job. So the trick will be working with your industry and the other industries here in Oregon about how we open things up to keep businesses alive, to give you guys a little opportunity, a little hope that your community will become viable sooner rather than later, but not at the risk of your populace at the same time. So it's going to be a real tightrope to walk. We've shown that we're in this together as Oregonians. Let's do the same thing as we hopefully get through this recovery too.
Hey, Congressman, it looked like Tamara Montner from Garibaldi Charters had her hand up.
You're better at this than I am, Barry. Go ahead.
Been a lot of it. So I wanted to echo a little bit what Walter was saying, just that we really on the coast depend on, getting people back in our communities as a charter industry. That's what we do. So we've been talking a lot, and we are all very aware that we are, a big draw to the coast. And everybody that we ask, what's it going to look like to deliberately and thoughtfully open this back up to getting people over so that we can open our businesses back up? the only answer we keep getting is, I don't know, which I totally get. We don't know either. But what I request is, until we are able to figure something out, and until anybody, you know, is able to come up with a solid plan for this, that what we need from you is just support for more adjustments and additional funding to the programs that can provide the direct relief to us small businesses over here. As a charter industry, most of the people that I've been talking to, myself included, did not apply for the PPPL or the EIDL for a couple of different reasons. The first reason being that they keep changing the rules so fast that we're scared to do it. Honestly, like, we're scared that if we apply for it, you know, and think that we're going to be able to recover some of the forgivable parts of that, they're going to change the rules on it tomorrow, and all of a sudden we've paid out money to people that we can't get back. Also, of course, you know, they are out of funding right now, but what I would request is that going forward, we look much closer at small businesses that do not have employees, independent contractors, self-employed. Basically everybody in the charter industry, or most of us, fall within this section, and we have gotten zero relief. We've applied for unemployment. You know, hopefully that will come through, but basically there's not a lot of good options for us here, and we just don't want to fall through the cracks.
Sure, fair comments, for goodness sakes. I think the rules of engagement on the PPP and the economic injury disaster loans are now pretty well set. If they tried to undo those or change those, it wouldn't just be you tomorrow, it'd be everybody, including 435 members of the United States Congress and 100 senators would be pretty upset with the agencies changing the rules. We did have a very rocky rollout of the disaster loan program with the SBA. As you know, their computer crashed. They've gotten some great technical help since then. And I think since March 31st, maybe a little after that, I'd say maybe it's April 2nd, they've had a pretty good process. The application is very straightforward, at least for the forgivable 10,000 that you could get. That's the max. It's 1,000 per employee, to your comment about, you know, self-employed folks, but they can all apply. Independent contractors, self-employed individuals are all eligible for these programs. So I would urge you to at least make that initial application. We are working, we're hearing not just from you, but from many other folks about potential unfairness. If you're a small business with one employee, you still have a lot of the same types of overhead costs. And ergo, you need more than just $1,000 because you got one employee. So we're working on that tomorrow to make sure that it's a little broader program. But as you pointed out, that's going to take more money. We're also working on that. I think there's a unanimous agreement in the United States Congress, except maybe one member from Kentucky, that we want to get behind this and put more money into the program. There are other disagreement is, are there some other priorities that we need to be dealing with also at the same time? And hopefully that will come to some resolution over the next week. So I think it's really important for every small business person, you know, a mom shop, a dad shop, you know, an independent contractor shop, to apply at least for the EIDL loans and try your hand at the PPP. The Paycheck Protection money is actually flowing or has been flowing. So once these programs get refunded, your application will hopefully be in line and get good consideration at least.
Thank you.
And it looked like Mark Cooper wanted to talk. Mark, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Oh, okay. He put his hand back on. And Katie, did you want to talk anywhere?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment to make. That testing came up many times.
What are you getting, suntan there? Is that what I'm seeing? You're sitting on the porch getting a bloody suntan while the rest of us are slaving away inside?
I am, Yes. Well, actually, I got kicked out of the office for online school, so. Here. So I just want to make a comment about testing, kind of putting on my my commissioner hat here. We have seen a lot of increase in testing take place in the county. That testing is mostly going through Samaritan, though County Public Health does have the ability to test now. So we do see the number of actual tests we have access to increasing. However, what I would say is what we're going to be into here real soon is having the tests, but running out of the actual stick that they use to do the test and the vessel they put it in. And so I feel like this issue with testing is not just about the actual test, it's about the devices you need to do it, as well as the PP&E. And so we're starting to see that flow of the actual tests come in, which is great. We're starting to see private labs being able to actually process the tests. So I feel like we're gaining capacity to be able to do some more proactive things with the seafood industry and others. Unfortunately, we're going to be out of the actual vessel and the stick to actually do the tests. So just a note on that. And I'm happy to chat with people offline about how public health can kind of be involved in some of the stuff you're thinking about as well. So feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all you're doing at the, grassroots, boots on the ground level. I really, really appreciate it. And I've heard the swap issue from a lot of our other healthcare providers also, Katie. We got to get on that. Well, I guess we're getting near the end. I'm sorry. You guys all paying attention to time better than I am. Great meeting. I really appreciate everyone coming and participating. It's always good to hear the same thing from folks at one setting. Go back with our thinking caps on how to fix some of these things. I got my marching orders trying to make sure these programs get refunded. Barry, hopefully get the guidelines out for the 300 million and continue to work on that observer program. Very, very important to all of us out here on the coast. So thank you guys so much for all you do. I wish I was in sunny Newport, a la Kitty Jacobson, but maybe after things open up, I'll wend my way out there and be one of those tourists and spend a little money in a great part of the great state of Oregon. Thank you all so much for participating.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carson.
Thanks.
Thank you.